That's it. I'm good.
Okay. And we are live, guys. Hi, everybody. Normally, what I would do, I don't normally tell them when we're going live. I just do it and let it go.
No, yeah, just to dive in because
I
we're
just dive right on
professionals.
in because I'm rude like that. Um,
Me and my jar of jalapenos, I'm going to take off screen.
there's nothing wrong with a jar of jalapenos.
And then
It
some
is what
fruit
it is.
leashes.
But hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Queer and Present Danger. I am your host, JB. You know me from various places, such as the corner store or the back of a trailer. Just out here doing my best, living my best life. I'm here with my other co-host, Tikiran. Hello, Tig. How are you?
Close.
Shut up.
That was so.
Shut up.
I am doing good. It is wonderful to get back on and enjoy this not crazy world we live in. But
Well,
hello, everybody. I'm Tehir Drayok at Tehir1 on all my socials. And yeah, I'm really excited to get into the discussion today, so I don't want to go into too much. But I there's so much going on. I'm just gonna let us roll with this because we could talk about all that other shit for hours
Listen,
and
this episode
hours.
is going to be what this episode is because,
Yes, I will
so
do
much
my
has
best to stay
happened
on topic.
and it's crazy and nuts and crazy and nuts and crazy and nuts. And so, like, this episode might go in a bunch of different places, but I am so excited. I am so happy to have with us on the show today, sitting in for Tyler, who is out singing for dollars. So good luck to you, Tyler. But I'm so happy to have our guest co-host, Carson.
Hi, hello. I'm very happy to be here. You want me to do a quick
Yes,
intro?
do a quick intro. Tell the people who you are.
Hi, yes, I am Carson Reese Beckwith. I use they, them. I am a transmasculine person, a trans advocate, a lover, a friend, boy to Sir Crispin, so many other things, but I'll leave it at that for now.
For
But I'm
now.
happy to be here, excited to see where this will go. Let whatever comes out, comes out. The world is a shit show, so we need
Listen,
this space now more than ever.
we're out here doing our best, and by doing our best, I mean
Some of us are
trying.
doing our best. Some of us are doing our absolute worst.
So
Both are
There was a
acceptable.
little car show. My only tangent, and I have to throw it out there.
do
There was
do
a
what you got to do.
literal
Tangent
car show
away.
in front of the White House today. I just want to make that point. There was a car salesman on the front lawn of the White House. Let's take a quick moment and realize that Donald Trump absolutely was the sleazy car salesman. Him and his fellow president Musk just having a moment together.
Hmm.
It's
That is just a
gross.
shame.
I
Absolute
hate
shame.
it. Everything about what's happening these days makes me angry to my core. But we're gonna put a pause on that because we're gonna get into that stuff. But I want to do our check in. How are we doing this week? How are we doing with our mental health? Did we do anything fun this weekend? Tell us. Let's talk about it. How are we doing?
The
I
sun
got
is
some
out, so the
feelings for that
veil has
Marietta.
like lifted. So that much is really nice. The world
That,
continues to burn, I think, around everything else, but having the
yeah.
sun is lovely. I got a
Yep.
nice beating over the weekend, always lovely. Trying to think of what else. Started medication over the weekend. Great stuff. So like mental health,
We're
all
big
things
proponents of mental
considered,
health.
doing doing okay. Holding a baseline,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
What about y'all?
it's been a week. I pay too much attention to politics. Most Americans don't, and it's sad. But I
Yeah.
pay too much attention to politics, and it's a lot of crap. And I cannot disclose exactly what I do for my job because I want to keep my job. But I am very connected and get a lot of those inside messages with a one of the many government groups that are facing all of these random, totally just idiotic executive orders. So
Mhm.
I get to see a lot of that inside communication on how they have to respond to it because They are a part of the government. That's how I'm going to phrase it. Uh, and as a result, it's sad. It's terrifying. I might end up like just getting some of that information so I can read it. I won't show it because I like my job, and they'll be like, "Oh, we know who we sent that to."
Hmm.
But I will happily read and paraphrase off of it for everyone else's consumption. But yeah, it's tough. But I had a great weekend. I got to turn JB into a marionette, and that was fun.
Oh, fun.
We sang a little song together, and it's going to be a core memory. This little piggy went to the market.
I hate
This little
you.
piggy
Oh,
stayed.
a
I
classic.
hate you for that. I love you for other things. Yeah, same. So this
Those
weekend,
strings to hope. You
so
got
this
much
weekend
kids?
was Sash Bash, and it was the first time I went. It was a very, very good time.
Mm-hmm.
And it had one of the things that it did do is kind of light a fire under me, for kind of maybe now, since this is the last year that this is happening in Iowa, maybe bringing something similar to Kansas City. Maybe making the Royal Leather Affair a yearly thing. We're in the very, very beginning planning stages of it.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where what I'm thinking. It might be a thing. Um, but other than that, this week has been. There's always a level of drop after you go from a place, so I've been kind of feeling up and down. But this too shall pass. I'm
Yeah.
gonna fiddle while Rome burns.
It's
Um,
it's also a great thing to mention to literally everybody, including anyone who watches, the idea that for those that haven't experienced like an event or something like that, or you haven't gone to be with your people, the sense of camaraderie, the sense of support that you feel going to an event or going to a run or anything like that in our communities is so special because you can just that mask that we all wear to make it through the everyday life gets to fall away, and it's just so enriching and rewarding to be able to have those energizing moments to feel that energy of the people around you. So it's always sad when you have to go, but it should, as it did with you, JB, light a fire to keep kicking it down the road because it's fun to dance in a dumpster fire.
yeah, I'm gonna fiddle while Rome burns, and I got new glasses, so I won't be walking around here
Yo.
with broken glasses and all of those things. Cause yay.
Random blue spots.
So Carson, since we have you here, I had a question that I have been wondering and pondering and trying to figure out for a while, and it's a question that was posed to me in a not so friendly way, but I think that I think it's an important question nonetheless. Um, why is it when we talk about trans issues, but
Yeah. I've talked to a few people about this, and the first thing that I have to say is because this country, society, etc., hates women. So like they hate femininity. They hate to see someone who is femme. It feels like a threat when someone steps into that in a powerful way. And so I think that that is a really big part of why people feel so negatively towards trans women in specific, because we're trying to see them, or society is trying to paint them as threatening men, when really what they are women stepping into their truth, trying to live powerfully, trying to take their rights and move forward in their lives. And I think that the thing, and JBU and I talked about this a little bit, that is hard for a lot of trans masc people to understand is that when you transition and begin to pass as a man or pass as someone who is masculine, you often take on a sense of safety and an ability to hide that many trans women do not have access to, or that people who are trans femme do not have access to, because the standard for femininity, for being a woman, is so much higher than what it is to be masculine and to be accepted because we like masculinity in this society. We are much more likely to look at someone who's trying to be or passing as or displaying themselves as masculine and go, yeah, that's totally fine. We'll let that slide because we like it when men are in power, when people who are masculine are leaders, but we don't like that from women. And so I think that is so often why we see a different narrative, why more trans femme people are involved in politics because they're being centered and they're being attacked more. They're the ones who are often being killed, who don't have access to jobs, who don't have access to safety. I could ramble on, but I'll leave it at that for
No,
now.
I
And I
think
would love
like
your thoughts.
you're like it's kind of along the same way that same thinking that I had. I also think that like the problem that especially cisgendered heterosexual men have with trans women is they don't know. I think all transphobia is rooted in misogyny,
Hmm.
regardless of whether it is for against trans men or against trans women. I think it's still rooted in misogyny, and I think when you kind of zoom out from that, women are supposed to be sexual beings for men, and when you put a man in that role, and I'm using the word man in quotes,
Yeah.
when you put a man in that role, as presenting as dressing as become being a woman, they don't know how to feel about that because then it's like, oh wait, if I'm attracted to a trans woman, does that mean I'm gay? Does that mean I'm bisexual? Does it mean I'm pansexual? Does it mean I'm anything other than straight? And that scares them
Hmm.
because then it becomes, well, why am I attracted? Well, if you're attracted to femininity, if you're attracted to women and someone is displaying femininity, then, you are still, in my mind, you are still straight. If you are a straight man who is attracted to trans women, you are still a straight man because you are, it's the femininity aspect that is attractive to you. It's not necessarily what they have in their, what they're covering with their garments. It's
Hmm.
the energy and the person who they are, and they can't handle that. And a lot of it is because they've been groomed to this idea of what masculinity is and what being a man is. Um,
They've
and
been groomed in the same way as to what a woman should be and what a woman should look like and what that role should be expected to be. Like, as you were speaking, the thing that came into my brain, we all remember the great grinder crash of the Republican convention.
yes,
Well, in similar ways, if you talk to any of the girls in Kansas City, a lot of the trans women that are doing activism in this space, they'll tell you that half of the people that have been clientele, that have been sexual partners for them, are the same exact men that are enacting terrible policies against them, that
yes,
are killing them in the streets, that are harming them, speaking bad on them, telling terrible things, putting them in jail, all of those different things, because there's so much shame around being attracted to trans people at large, but especially trans women, and what that, like, the secret that hides, that they're hiding behind, when it comes to loving a trans person. And so there's that fun layer too. It reveals so much about that person's insides that they don't want to look at themselves, let alone talk about publicly.
agreed. I agree with that. I also think hi B Ren, we see you. Mwah. Um, I also think that there is and this is going to be vulgar, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. They make trans women make their dick hard now know how to handle that. You know what I mean? Like there's this level of like, what do I do with the feelings and the emotions? And because men aren't taught to, you know, actually deal with their own emotions and deal with their feelings and deal with things, they and process what those emotions mean and how they feel. There is this level of, I need to attack that because it makes me feel weird.
Yeah.
And you know then on the other side of the coin, we have women who feel like if we give trans woman status, it somehow takes away from them. It somehow takes away
Yeah.
from who they are. And again, that's an insecurity that comes from misogyny. And it comes from this place of, you know, I'm not good enough. It's so interesting. One of the people that I follow, that I love following, is T.S. Madison,
Ugh,
who gets herself into trouble all the time for saying stuff. But
constantly.
the thing about it is that you may not like what she has to say or the way she says things, but she's not wrong. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Like when she says things like transphobia affects all women, that's not she's not wrong. Like there's this idea of, especially in the black community or with black women, there are you look at Serena Williams, Michelle Obama, you know, all of these people who have been called men in their life, because they have big arms. Serena Williams is a tennis player. Of course she's going to have big arms and a bigger frame,
Yeah.
but they say, oh, that's a man, and those things still persist to this day. And it's when we think about it like that, and I always say, it'd be one. It's one that would be the day that the LGBT community and communities of color band together will be the day that all this shit comes down. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But we have been conditioned to fight each other or to not be allies to each other for religious reasons, or we don't do that around here, or we don't want you in our camp, and that comes on both sides. You know, especially that we don't want you in our camp. That's a thing that comes on both sides. It's the reason why in so many LGBT communities you don't see an integration of the people of color and the white community.
Yeah.
It's because you might see a little bit of cross every once in a while, but as a whole, there's no real cross there. And a lot of that is because we've been taught and conditioned that the crabs in a bucket mentality. If you're doing something, if you're getting rights, it's somehow taking away from me. And B. Ren says it also has a lot to do with generational trauma. We act away based on how we are raised, and it won't be until we break that cycle and try to be better in the next generation that things will change. And I
Yeah.
agree with that, but I also think that it's upon us in this generation now to break that cycle. And that means that we need to be having different conversations than the ones we're having now. You know, because it's one thing to say, oh, I'm an ally for the trans community. It's another thing to put your money where your mouth is and be standing out there and marching on the streets. And I will be the first one to say I'm not great at it, because especially when it's cold outside, bitch, I'm not going outside. Like, it's cold. I don't do that. I don't even like to leave my house when it's less than, 45 degrees.
So one of the things that I'll jump in on, and for anyone who's watched this and noticed that I'm sitting back, there's a very real point for that. We're talking about trans rights, and I am a cisgendered man. I have everything that I want to support on, but it's not my platform. I want to give space, and I want to shut the fuck up because it's not my experience, so it's not my space to do that. So if I'm quieter this time around, there's a specific reason, because I would not be the person who needs to step up and talk about what the struggles of people in the black community are. Fucking look at me. I am about as white as you can be.
I
I
was
can
going to make
take
a
my
joke,
shirt
but I'm
down
going to leave
and
it alone.
reflect the sun down there out at you. We're in a queer podcast. You can go for it. You talking about my dick?
Not downstairs, it's not.
There you go. But the idea of the generational conversations that we need to have, and what B. Rin brought up about the idea of there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of things that we are taught and discuss with our families before us that we are carrying through to where we're at now. It's why we have so many islands rather than we have a melting pot. The idea of everyone's like the United States is a melting pot. We're not a fucking melting pot. We're a salad. We're a Cobb
Yes.
salad. You've got little pieces here. You got egg over there. You got ham over there. You got little bits everywhere, but nothing is actually mixed together the way that a good salad is. Anyone who eats salads know what the fuck I'm talking about. You don't want just one bite of lettuce and then one bite of an olive. You mix that shit. Anyway,
I mean,
the shh, 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 shh. We can talk about how you eat. Um, the the thing with me is, for my background, for those that don't know about it yet, I am Mason's on. Hey, Mason.
hey, Whisper
Uh,
Mason.
I am uh, I'm a middle child from a family who both of my parents grew up on farms in Missouri. They were both raised Southern Baptist. They were both raised in very traditional conservative households. I was raised in a conservative Christian household. My brother and dad regularly listen to Rush Limbaugh, blah 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 blah.
And he did.
Then I had, huh?
And he did.
Yeah, and my dad.
I said, how they listen to Rush Limbaugh? He did.
They listened to,
Oh, I thought you said they
like you would
listened
have
to
heard
Rush
the
Limbaugh.
key
I
if
was
you
like,
listened to it.
wait a minute. Now he's sending us messages beyond the grave because I can't live like
speaking.
this.
Yeah. Anyway, the point being, I was raised with that. If you read my blog, yes, I'll plug my blog, shadowstolight.com. It's all about my journey into fully accepting myself in the LGBT space, as well as my own mental health struggles through all of that. And it talks about all the things that I was raised on about the LGBT community being sinful, shameful. It was something that you should not be, and how I had to work through all of that stuff that I was taught up through I was 16 by the time I started questioning it. Well, like technically that Boy Scout camp I was like 12, but we'll get there. Uh, but what really mattered, and for a totally other thing, but it's relating to the same idea. My dad, my mom specifically, gave me a story about how my dad, while he was going to work at a pharmacy in downtown St. Louis, was approached by two young teenage black individuals who he was a rural Missouri guy. So he saw two kids that were about 15, 20 years younger than him, and he addressed them like he would have with anybody. He didn't even think about what it was, but he said when they told him to give him their money, give his money to them, he said, hold on, boys. And they got pissed because he said boys to a pair of young black men. And then they beat him with a chain. So I got to learn about that whenever I was like 13, 14 years old. And that at the beginning skewed my opinion about what the city was like, what um, black people in the city were. And after getting away from my family and a lot of the racism that I was being taught, I started to actually meet, talk to, and learn about the community that I was starting to live in. I guarantee there's unspoken and way down deep things stuck in my head that I have constantly had to be like, no, that's fucking stupid. Don't think about it that way. Or no, that shouldn't have been a thought in your head. It's one of those things that people have to deal with their own internal struggle from things that were pushed on them during that time. But it isn't just us. We don't need to have our own conversations for it. It's at this point that we need to start because I have a 6 year old son. I am working my ass off to prevent any of that kind of rhetoric from being put into his life. He randomly has started learning how to say, bro, what's up, bro? Hey, bro, from kids at school. And I've been politely but firmly being like, hey, bud, just be careful with that because that kind of like talk is subtle, but little things like that can start building that idea of toxic masculinity. And I had to use that with my 6 year old son because I want him to start learning about what that is now so that when I have those bigger conversations with him later, he's at least aware of that. So we need to have those conversations ourselves. I agree, but our generation needs to also break down that cycle early with the next generations to make sure they're as aware and educated as possible to get to push back against that, because the foundations that we build now breaking ours is what we need to pass on to the future.
And I agree. I agree with that. I think that is. First of all, thank you for sharing that little glimpse of your journey.
No
Um,
drama.
and also being honest and saying that, like, there are some times where you have those little thoughts in your head that that you have to go, no, that's not true, or you shouldn't think like that. Listen, also self-hate is a thing. I grew up in, in that sense, we're telling stories. I grew up in a predominantly white area. There was I lived on the in the in on base housing, so that was a little bit more diverse. But most of my friends were white. All of the people that I hung out with were white. I only ever had one black girlfriend. Going through school, like things like that. And so I had there were times where like I would feel very uncomfortable being in a space that was all black. That wasn't family, that wasn't like people I knew. And I had to unlearn so many things, you know, about black people as a black man, and as a black person. I need to stop saying black man because,
Non-binary.
not binary. But it's just
But even
Don't
that's an
worry, JB. I
example
do
of
it
how that
all the
stuff.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, it's even an
to
example
myself.
of how that stuff just sticks with you and your own. Like, I'm trying to realize my true self, and as doing that, it is you had these years of habits that you've built in, and trying to break those and trying to do better. I've held the thing of, it's not making the mistake, it's not realizing and acting to do better. So if you stumble on something and you say something that you like, ah, fuck, I fucked up. It don't. The goal is to realize that it was a fuck up. If you mentally are like, shit, I said something, I did something, whatever, even if it's just a thought in your head, but the immediate afterthought to that is that's not the right way to think. You're on the right course, because breaking those habits that you built over the course of your life is very difficult. And that's a prime example of a black man versus a black person, because it's something that you had to, in some respects, identify as, because that's what you were either taught or forced, or you had to put the mask on to survive. I
yeah.
mean,
I mean,
let's
and
be
it's
blunt
still
about that part.
and I still do. Like I still have to put that on, and a lot of spaces that I'm in because you know there is a level of especially in Trump's America, there is a level of danger. You know what I mean? Like there is a level of, oh, I'm already different. I'm already more feminine. I'm already more outgoing and boisterous. The nails and all of that stuff. Like I was just talking to my sister earlier today, about me kind of looking at other at other jobs and finding other opportunities, and she's like, you gotta go put your nails, stop getting your nails painted and stop doing this because we're not living in the same universe, and these things can be a problem. And I'm like, well, no, this is why I'm looking for queer spaces to work in, so that is something less that I don't have to worry about. That I can be me and be myself in these spaces and not feel like I have to always have my guard up or always be ready to box. You know what I mean? Because that is a thing.
And then let's spin it back in to make sure that we get Carson's perspective
Absolutely.
on this.
All
Uh,
good.
how do you feel about like some of the stuff that we're talking about? How has that been like for you, going into spaces that aren't as safe or flat out unsafe, and then even in spaces that you feel safe, do you feel even within our own community some level of like otherness that
Yeah,
you
totally.
shouldn't?
Yeah. I have Okay, a few thoughts. First of all, I just wanted to say, let's see if my it's so late, my brain is trying to get all of the things together. But to JB, what you were saying, just wanted to recognize and say that I do the same thing all of the time. We internalize so many of those messages, and it can be so hard when we're trying to unpack all of those things we've internalized for ourselves. Well, we're also trying to like scream at Trump that we're humans, and we're trying to have those like bigger battles there. So there's just so many things that we're constantly pushing back on. So love that, feel that. But then in terms of our actual community, I've had this conversation at some contests recently where someone came in and said, all leather spaces, all play spaces are meant for trans people. Trans people are supposed to be there. They are welcome there as well. And I think that that should be true deep in my heart. And I don't think that it's currently true because I have lived in a body where I walk into a room, even my lovely partner, when he first met me, assumed that I had a dick, and I don't. And so I often walk into play spaces and people think one thing about me, don't know other things about me, and maybe knowing what's in my pants is going to change their mind as to whether or not they want to engage with me. So I go into every space hyper aware of how I'm being perceived, who I am talking to, how I engage with people. Like, I'm never going to go into a space that is primarily like white cis men dominated and be like, oh, yes, I guarantee I could walk out of here safely tonight. There's
Right.
always a little edge that I have. I'm always thinking of an exit plan. And like, that's for someone that passes as essentially a white cis man in most spaces. Like, that is extra layered, and often why you don't see like a lot of trans femmes in leather spaces because they're going to be judged, they're not going to feel safe, they might be taken exclusively for their genitalia and not for their identity and recognized in that way. So oftentimes trans people have their own play spaces or their own play parties for those exact reasons, because there is a level of concern and safety that people feel.
And that was one of the things that I was so proud of, and not to toot my own horn, with
It might be.
my event that I did, because there was, everyone was, was invited and in the space and felt comfortable enough to play and to do things and to enjoy themselves.
Yes.
And for me, that's what I want, and it's interesting that you made the comment about, like, that people are going to perceive you differently. You don't know how people are going to perceive you, things like that. For me, as a black person, not even putting in the non-binary stuff, but just me as a black person, there is always a level of, am I going to be accepted in this space for who I am?
Yeah.
And how is that going to be? Before I was, in the relationships I'm in now, I remember going to a bar one time and walking up to this group of people because I knew one of the people in there, and I had just moved to that city, and I was like, "Hi, my name is Jason, and nice to meet you." I was like 19, and they were like, "Oh, chocolate breaks me out," and
Mm.
there's a funny ending to that, but because it didn't bring him out that much, but but there, that is still something that kind of stays with me, and I never know when I go to people, when we go to events and we're talking and all of that. I don't know how people are going to react to my presence, and
Totally.
I'm not accepted amongst traffic. I think it's because I like to choreograph my turn signals whenever to whatever's. Mason, you are funny. But
So
you know, I recognize that I have to, like I say, when I walk into a room, I have to know what everybody is thinking.
So how here's the question that we really should be addressing on another part of that. How do we work on creating spaces that are more accepting. Yes, we have to work on people's own individual mentality, but how do we build out those spaces so that way people of color and trans people feel more welcome there, and we start not just trying to work on the idea of changing individuals' minds, but work on building the community to be more like that, and not specifically for our own spaces, but let's go beyond that. Let's go to the idea of in Trump's America, because I refuse to call this standard America. How do we start working on that pushback, but in a real sense, not just going out and protesting specifically to raise awareness, but also to enact change. What does that look like from each of you on steps that can be taken? Start with the idea of our individual communities, because creating safe spaces in a united front is the beginning of any real action. But then beyond that, as a community within Trump's America, how do we deal with the onslaught that's being pushed against specifically trans people, but then as a community as a whole, and where literally I'm going to throw this in there because we need to keep bringing it up for anyone and everyone who ever watches anything. Uh, Muhammad Khalil, a naturalized American citizen, was abducted from his home and taken to an undisclosed location for multiple days before anyone could even get in contact with him or he could have a court case. And by that I mean this was an American citizen. Full stop. Nothing else matters. American citizen abducted from home, no due process, nothing, for the simple thing that they were a protester. That's it. A federally protected thing that you are allowed to do with free speech, abducted and taken out of a home. How do we first build our own community and then start working toward real change where American citizens don't have to be worried about a door getting bashed down and taken away in the middle of the night, a la
Yeah.
Nazi Germany?
Oh, big questions. I mean, I think to the first thought that I had on your question initially was like, let people who look like JB, that look like me, lead those spaces. Like that is the reason that JB's event was so successful, because it wasn't a cis white man saying, no, but it's gonna be inclusive. It was led by JB, who we know, who we trust, who has created, like, I follow your lead. I know I'm gonna feel safer in that space. I can't talk about the amount of times that I have heard either cis men or like AMAB, white, masculine, non binary people be like, oh, but it is a safe space for trans men. I'm like, well, I don't trust you until I am actually there and I get to see it. So let those people lead those spaces. Let trans women design a play space, design a leather space. And I can guarantee you it's going to at least baseline be better than what another individual who holds a lot more privilege in our community is going to build. And frankly, that expands to the national conversation as well. I think right now we really need to be looking at resourcing specifically Black trans women, Black trans led organizations in this country, DEI initiatives. Like, put your money there. They're the ones losing so much money right now because everybody is saying we're no longer interested in funding this. This isn't a priority for us. We want to stay on Trump's side, et cetera, et cetera. So do the opposite. Pour your time, pour your energy, pour your voice and your money into those people because they know what they're doing. They have community in their pockets, in their hearts. Let them do it.
And I will say to your first thing, I said Trump's America earlier. Here's the thing. This is going to be a spicy take, and it is what it is. I'm so sorry if you get mad. I don't think Trump changed America. I think Trump revealed America. And so to call it Trump's America is putting a reason or is trying to make an excuse for people being the way that they are. And so to your first question, how do we make our spaces? I think Carson's absolutely right. You let them lead. Understand that there are times where where your presence is not appreciated. understand that there will be spaces and things that are going to be just for those people, and you can't be upset with that. I've said all day long. I think that that spaces that we go to should have female led spaces. There should have spaces that are all cisgender men, queer men, because they need that space. So I'm just keeping it 100. There needs to be spaces for all men. You know what I mean? Cis and trans. And there needs to be spaces for trans. But everyone needs to have their own little piece of the pie. And then we can say, okay, how do we all come together and have these conversations? So that there are black queer spaces. There are white queer spaces. There are spaces that mix in between. I'm not saying that we should all go into our separate rooms and never speak to each other. Not at all. But there are some conversations that I can have with, say, an L or or even a colleague that I can't have with generally white people, even if they are allies. Because there are just certain things I'm not comfortable saying in mixed company. There are certain things that are specific to my experience as a black person that other black people will understand, that we don't have to explain to other people. So there's a level of comfort in those spaces. I, for one, said if I were to ever own a space or anything like that, it would be, I'm being very careful with my words. I don't know if you noticed that. But if I were to ever own a space, it would be a space that had dedicated nights for specific groups of people, so that those people had time to commiserate, to fellowship with each other, to play if they want to play, to even just have those really open conversations that someone isn't going to get offended by, because they may be talking about talking about this specific group of people in a specific way. You know what I mean? And then allow us, those of us who are in those spaces, to challenge those things. You know what I mean? Because I will tell you right now, from now to the end of the day, I could have a conversation with a white Trump supporter and it will go nowhere. Tig can have a conversation with a white Trump supporter and they will at least give him the time of day to listen. And we're all like that. It just is what it is. So, having those spaces and being able to cultivate those spaces. And that doesn't mean that cultivating those, that doesn't always mean you need to be in them. You know what I mean? It can be hey, you guys want to do this? This is the thing that you guys want to do. Here's my space, or you use the space that I have. Or hey, you guys want to do this, and you don't have you can't afford a space, or you can't afford this. Here's some money. Let us seed into and pour into these communities who are underserved, because then, like you said, they will always come back, and that always comes back tenfold, 20-fold, because you are building those bridges. You know what I mean? Like you're building those bridges, and people can then say, "Oh, you actually care, and you're not just saying shit." You know what I mean? Like I remember a couple of years ago when people were like, "Oh, I'm wearing the blue ribbon so that you can know I'm safe." I don't think that makes you safe. You know what I mean?
No.
I don't think that makes you safe. What makes you safe is pouring into those communities, listening to what those people are saying, and even if you do not like what they're saying or you disagree with what they're saying, allowing them to be able to say it. Because I guarantee you, on the other side, they're saying shit, and we low-key are allowing them to say it. Because it's our parents, because it's our grandparents, because it's our best friend from high school, because I know they're not really, racist in their heart. Yeah, but they're comfortable enough with you to say those things because they think that you think like they do. And you have to disabuse them of that and explain to them why they are wrong. Why they, hey, have you been to this spot over here? And that, even if that means bringing them into to communities with that community's consent. Because with that community's consent, do not put black people or people of color or trans people or LGBT people in situations that will make them unsafe. So with that community's consent, going, hey, let's sit down and have a conversation. Why do you feel the way that you feel? With someone who is willing to have that conversation. I'm always willing to have that conversation. You know what I mean? Like, you can come to me and be like, hey, yo, my friend's a little racist. You want to talk to him about it? And I'll have that conversation. Because I'm going to ask you questions like, what are your experiences with black people? What are your experiences with other people of color? Why do you feel the way that you feel about these things? And do you know the realities and the histories of the thing that you're talking about? And allowing that conversation and that dialogue to happen. And, can do it in a way. Will I be irritated? Of course. I'm irritated.
But that's when you get to go back to your own spaces where you can talk about the irritation, where you can talk about how much it sucks. And that's somebody else's business to talk about and hear about, That's why it's so important to have those different areas that people can retreat to and be with community and be with like-minded people where they don't have to worry about having those conversations. And then if you want to step out and have them, you can.
You can.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing is we need to really start listening to what marginalized communities have to say. And what I mean by that is, it's one thing to be like, oh, we're going to have a town hall and we're going to talk about, LGBT issues. That is such a broad topic that you really can't get into the weeds on what people are actually saying. Because my experience as an LGBT person is very different than Carson's experience as an LGBT person, which is very different than Tig's experience as an LGBT person, which would be very different than Korea's experience as an LGBT person. And I bring Korea up. She's a local black trans activist here. Those are going to be very, very different conversations, and they're going to have very, very different needs. And so saying we're going to do an LGBT, town hall is playing lip service, rather than saying, hey, I'm going to make sure that I want to gather, a group of representatives from the black trans community, both men and women, and ask you what your needs are. What are things that we can be doing to assist you? How can we help you feel more comfortable in our spaces? And actually sitting down and listening, and then immediately taking action.
Putting money behind that, because let me tell you the amount of times this city has sat down and said, tell us what your needs are, and people have gone through, especially black trans women, the labor of being like, here are the exact things that we need, and actually here's exactly the cost that it would take, usually a penny in comparison to most budgets. And then the city goes, well, we're a sanctuary city, but we're not going to fund that. That's where we need to see the support to implement those things, to actually make them happen. Because people talk about what they need all the time. They're practically screaming it from the rooftops. Let's actually hear that and do something about it. Put money, time, resources into it.
I might be in my deconstruction journey and all of that stuff, but the Bible say faith without works is dead. And all the lip service that people give without actually doing anything behind it it doesn't mean anything. And then and what happens to those of us who are having those conversations and are saying, hey, these are the things and the resources that we need. We get tired of saying it, because y'all are tired of hearing it. And then it's, oh, well, no one knows what they want. No one knows what we don't know what they want to do. What we need is these programs, and we need these programs to be funded. Because at the end of the day, nothing in this country moves without money. Nothing. And
go
ahead.
ahead.
Equal rights
I didn't want to
cities.
stop
Yes,
your
I love
roll.
that.
That's what I was going to reference was a lot of things that people have hearkened to, especially in this day and age where you have these the if it's longer than 10 seconds, no one gives a shit. Like, let's be blunt. If it's longer than a
TikTok
10-second,
mentality.
15-second, yeah, the idea of that quick feed mentality, people grab onto buzzwords. And I was going to reference what Mason said, and I had another point that I actually want to go back to. But we need to try to understand that calling things certain things, like sanctuary cities, means that it's a double edged sword. Yes, it is the idea of it is a protected place where people can try to feel safe. Yes, we need to put the funding behind it, but the idea of it's we're not going to let these people do shitty things to these communities. The negative side of that, the bad side of that sword, is it allows the other side to say, oh, they're just building a little haven for all these terrible people. We need to make sure that these people aren't just trying to build some weird focused area there. Let's go ahead and start breaking down or taking funding away from these cities because it's the city's problems. It's the city that does that. Do you know how many rural, trans, black, LGBT people that I have heard about who are like, there's no one here, so I have to drive 3 hours to get somewhere? It's not it. They aren't isolated areas. This exists in the richest, poorest, rural, urban. It exists everywhere. And it needs to be understood that these places are equal rights, not sanctuaries. And that needs to try to work from, instead of making these little microcosms in our country, that whole idea of, ooh, there's a piece of egg in my fucking salad. No, that's one thing. There's so much more in there. And we need to recognize that and work on not trying to build these sanctuaries, but building the idea of the network, building the idea of this exists throughout there. These are the nodes for the power that builds to protect the pieces that connect us. So the idea of just spreading the idea of the equal rights and things like that are more something that I think we as a group need to focus on, instead of trying to just fall into these buzzwords that are like, yeah, it makes that city sound fun, but it actually is just in a lot of ways because we don't get the resources, we don't get the funding. It's just lip service. There's no real backing to any of that. So it just allows for the other side to attack cities and claim that cities are these hives of scum and villainy. Star Wars. I got to reference, but that creates a bigger problem because it creates these specific areas that the rest of the country can look at and be like, those are the bad areas. That's where all the problems are. Like, there is more gun violence in rural Alabama than there is in New York City per capita. There is more shootings, more murders, more crime in those areas than there is in cities. But because cities are massive metropolitan areas, it looks like there's more. Oh, there was 2,000 murders in New York City. This is not an actual statistic. Don't quote me. 2,000 murders in New York City. Yeah, but it's a city of like 5 million people. That
More than that.
town in just making the point. We're not going with actual numbers. There's a town in Georgia that has 4,000 people and 6 people were killed. Statistics state that that city is far more dangerous. So it's people spin statistics in a way that make it really difficult to actually have that support, and that's one of the things that we need to try to work on to actually use to our advantage, including just terminology. It's a tool that is both good and bad. One of the things that I wanted to go back to, that I went off on my little tangent, was something that JB you had said about people not knowing what everybody's individual history is. I think there is an overwhelming level of ignorance in our country on history. not white cis history, the history of our country. If you asked any white person what, if they could name just five of the largest incidents of people of color being massacred in this country, two or three people might be able to reference Tulsa, but that's about it.
You
They,
have Tulsa, there's
understanding the
Rosewood,
history.
there's
Go for it. Just run them out.
I mean, I can. There's a couple of them. I mean, there's so many of them that it's hard to like. And the
Yeah.
thing is, these aren't things that we talk about in school. So it's the stuff that. But I know Tulsa. I know Rosewood in Florida. I know St. Louis. There was one in outside of Atlanta where Lake Lanier is. Because that used to be a predominantly black town that was literally flooded with the people still in it. It wasn't just in the South either. It was those things happened in the North too. Don't let the smooth taste fool you. Shit wasn't sweet for us
Yeah.
out in the North either. But
Chicago,
yeah,
Detroit, Philadelphia. Like, I literally, and God's bless TikTok. They literally have a thing that if you look on the if you get the right setup on TikTok, you can find something that references all of these different events that occurred across the United States over since our founding, of all of these different massacres and different things that happened. And it's one of those things of, we need to understand the histories of the people that we're having these discussions with, at least a base understanding, because that provides the opportunity for those conversations to really go somewhere, rather than it just being that little node of each of these people having these comfortable places to feel accepted and be able to have these conversations, educating each other about our backgrounds, about the trans rights movements, about people in other countries and throughout history who have fought and died to be recognized for who they are, as well as the BIPOC community and so forth. You need to have people at least have some of those some of that base level history, so that you have at least some idea, not an actual like I experienced it connection, but at least some connection that you can build from. And I think promoting that in our own community as well as around the country is one of the small steps that especially white people could do to try to offer a better chance at quality communication and growth, is by taking the time to learn about the background people come from. I mean, your guys' thoughts on that would be great. I just wanted to
real
say.
quick before I have you, and then we're gonna move on because I know that Carson would like to go to bed at some point.
Sunday.
Carson.
And I don't want to.
Yeah,
I don't want to
sorry,
keep you
Mason.
up.
I just read Mason's
But
thing.
Mason said, name 10 incidents where black people were massacred in the U.S. The 1770s, the 1780s, the 1790s. But I mean, it's like it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. It's and imagine, what happened to queer people in those during that time period. Imagine what happened to trans people in that time period, because they existed then too. You know what I mean? Like there are reports and there are stories of trans people around doing real shit during that time. But it's not; those aren't things that we hear about as Americans. Because it doesn't fit the mold of white people good came to America, gave gave the Native Americans good morals and God. You know what I mean? It doesn't fit that. So we don't hear about that. And, we don't hear about these stories and these things that happen. And now we have an administration that is actively working to remove those things from the history of our country. Going into government websites and removing photos that have anything that just say the word gay. They removed the photo of the Enola Gay from the archives.
Do you want a more frustrating example of that also reference Black history?
They got rid of the
They
Tuskegee Airmen
removed
too.
the references to the Tuskegee
Airmen.
Airmen.
Yep. And it's one of those things where it's white cis het people that don't know what it's like to see their history being erased in real time. And I watched at the beginning of this presidency. I watched in real time from the historical the words, Jason, the Park Service website, any mention of transgender coming off of the Stonewall site, where they're talking about it was trans women who led that march. And I watched it happen. I literally watched them delete the things off in real time. And it was so... There was a level of shame I felt watching that happen. And then to see it happening to people of color and the larger LGBT community, like it's heartbreaking, because these people are people who did what they did to make our lives better. And one of the things that me and my sister were talking earlier today, and we talked about how like young people these days are more conservative because they don't know the struggle of what their grandparents had to go through. And so they see the fight that we're having now as unnecessary. And what I find interesting about that is it's so easy for the clock to go backwards. It's hard for it to go forwards. It's hard for us to make progress. But it is so much easier for things to go back to the way they were. And I said before, if you let them do what they want to do with trans people, they're coming after the rest of the LGBT community next. And when they're done with that, they're going to go with all the people of color. It's a cycle. It is a way to bring people, to pull things back. The person who is oh my God, I cannot remember his name, what his position is right now, but he is in the Department of Commerce. He has said, that minorities in this country need to learn their place. We need to sit down and take a knee and know our place. And he has said that about Black MAGA. He said it about Tim fucking Scott. He needs to take a knee and learn his place. They're already laying the groundwork for all of these things. And we are like, well, it's just trans people. It doesn't matter to me. I don't really understand that anyway. You don't have to understand to have empathy. You don't have to understand to treat people the way that you would want to be treated. And I'm going to move quickly through some things really fast. And then want you to have, as I know you got some thoughts, but I want to just do this really fast. The joint address to Congress was some bullshit. We all know that it was some bullshit. It was crazy. I don't understand what the hell was going on, and we all sat and watched it. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves for even giving that any airtime, but it was what it was. I wanted to make sure that it was going to be as crazy as I thought it was going to be. Into that one. Jasmine Crockett, you were doing an amazing job. I'm so glad to see you doing what you're doing. AOC, you're doing an amazing job. I'm so glad to see you doing what you're doing. Maxwell Frost, you're doing an amazing job. I'm so glad to see you doing the things that you're doing. Let's see. We need to get together and we need to get the Democrats to hold the line on all of this shit, because this is how you stop it. We've been saying that you need to do more. You doing more is holding the line. We elected you into Congress to hold the line from this foolishness. And so that's those two soapboxes. Before we start calling people to the carpet, because it's time to bring people to the pulpit. Do you have any final thoughts, Carson?
The one thing I just wanted to add on was I do think that it is important to talk about history with the other side to try and get them to understand where we're coming from, all of those different things. But I also just need us to keep telling stories to our own people and to passing down those stories and that history. I can't I've like my heart has broken when I've met a young gay person who doesn't know about Stonewall. Or like I remember last year meeting a young queer person who didn't know anything about ballroom and the roots of ballroom. Like we need to know those things in our communities and in our youth. JB, I know it was a whole thing where like we need to sit down so that they also know that like we got here for a reason. Like we scrapped to get where we currently are. So we're not going to fall back forever. We are here. We know how to do it. We have the tools. I think it's just as important that we have those stories to build off of and also to remind us that like this is a long fight. This
Yeah.
is not just a today problem. We've been doing this for years
And the
before
thing
anybody was on this land at all. So,
And I will say this, and this is that will be the last thing I say on this thing. What happened was that straight cis gay men got gay marriage and sat the fuck down.
correct.
They said we got what we wanted. We're good.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for y'all to get up. All right. Before I call my person to the pulpit, would either of you like to go first?
Why don't you break the ice for Carson? I need a moment to
You
pick
go
which
for it.
dumbass I'm
Okay.
going for.
Megan Kelly, you stupid bitch. Bring your ass to the front of the congregation. Listen, sweets. I'm gonna need for you to take whoever's peeing out of your mouth and out of your ears and listen to the things that people are saying. For a woman who was denigrated and said they slept their way to the top, why would you say that same thing about Kamala Harris? Why would you put that out into the universe? Why would you spend all of your time for the man who called you a bitch and said you must be on your period after the day after a debate? Why would you carry water for him? Why would you continue to enact his agenda for a check? I mean, that's the answer. It's for a check. But the hypocrisy on you is so rank. It's you are the epitome of a Karen. You are what, when we say that bitch was acting like a Karen, Megan Kelly is the face that comes up in my head. You are the worst of the worst. You are what happens when shit meets vomit. I need you to do better, not just for us. I need you to do better for yourself. That's not all I want to say, but I'm trying to keep it cute. And another person that I'm going to bring up to the front. Donald Trump. The White House is not your personal car lot. The White House is not for you to do commercials for Tesla. It's not the place for you to hawk your watches and your bitcoins and all of that stuff. That's not the place for that. That's the people's house. You know what I'm saying? My ancestors built that bitch. And what I need for you to do is actually listen to the American people who put you into office and not those rich motherfuckers. If you want to not be seen as a not Megyn Kelly is Karen Prime, I live. Mason, I love you. If you do not want to be seen as the worst president in history, I mean, you kind of already have
Too
that
late.
from 2016. If you don't want that 2 years in a row, or two terms in a row, then I need you to actually figure out what it is that you're gonna do to actually help, because the price of eggs ain't gone down. They still sky high. They actually higher now than they was before. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the stock market is lower than it's been in a long time. And these are things that you have done. And then you had the nerve of mitigating all to tell us that you don't pay attention to the stock market. You're a liar. You're a liar, sir. And I'm done.
Incredible. Cathartic.
That's not all
It
I
is.
wanted to cuss out,
Very.
but I'm trying to
Do
be.
you have one?
Well, I'm bouncing between two, so I can do both.
Do both of
My
them.
first
Go
one,
for it.
my first one that I thought of because I've been raging about it today is Representative Keith Self of the wonderful state of Texas. I won't rag too hard on Texas because I know so many lovely Texans, but I really hate some of these policies that y'all are coming with. The felony for trans people situation, really got to get it together. But Self really decided today that he was going to double down on misgendering our wonderful Sarah McBride in a session, and just kept over and over again calling her Mister. And sir, I need you to get over yourself. I really need you to move on. I really need you to do your actual job that people voted you in for, and stop wasting all of your time, petty energy, and money on misgendering somebody sitting right in front of you that you well know is a woman. So don't do all of that. You're going to get called out for it. And at the end of the day, it meant that you didn't get to do your job at all. And we will all remember. Because it's on record, it's on the TV, and it's on TikTok.
You
So
just mad because she looked better than your wife.
I'm telling you, you're just calling yourself out. So that's my first one. And the second one that came to my mind is not just Elon Musk specifically, but his little cronies. All the little ones who are like crawling their way through the different branches of the federal government, especially like the 19, 20, 21 year olds.
The
The mistakes that
roaches. Call them what
y'all
they are,
should
roaches.
be correct. The mistakes that y'all should be making are like not these ones, not with federal secrets. You should be going and having really bad drinks. I need you to be messing around with random people, figuring your sexuality out, all that sort of stuff. You should not be deleting data. Please. Get it together. You're not going to end up having a job for like 15, 20 years because people are going to know that you did that. You're being stupid and you're following an absolute idiot of a man, and you're not going to see any of the benefits at the end of the day. So get it together. Go find something else to do. Go stand outside of 7-Eleven like the rest of us.
Get a Slurpee and a Big Gulp, bitch.
That's what life's all about.
I love it. I do. I mean, that's one thing I miss about 7-Elevens. A big bite and a Slurpee. Shit. After the club, used to get me right together. Sorry. Go ahead, Tig.
Monsieur Brian Glenn, come on down here for a minute. I got a conversation to have with you. You are the worst looking
Not worth looking.
piece of garbage that I have. Oh, this man has so many problems. You dared to stand in a room full of reporters, probably hugging up next to that one Russian news agency that was allowed into the Oval Office while Zelensky was there, and you had the fucking gall to ask him why he doesn't wear a suit.
We didn't even talk
You
about that, and I
had
was going to cuss
you
them out too, so
had
go ahead.
you had the unmitigated timidity to try to step into that man's world and ask him why he doesn't respect that office. Do you understand this is a man who has been in a war zone for 3 years, who regularly has death squads trying to hunt him down, is waiting for a fucking missile to come through his front window? This man has been fighting to save his country. And you're asking him if he wants to wear a suit? Thank fucking God Zelensky is a smart comedian who literally looked at you dead in the face and said, "Oh, when the war is over, I'll absolutely get a costume." FYI, for those that weren't informed, Ukrainian for suit is costume with a Kostum. So he was saying, I will get a suit when it's over, but I will wear a costume like you are whenever I finish fighting this fight. Bless Zelensky for the ability to deliver a fucking slap without it looking like anything. It was amazing. And then you have wormed your way in there just because your girlfriend is usually busy underneath the Oval Office desk getting some from Trump. That way she can stay in there to be one of his little friends. There is no way in hell you would have a job if it wasn't for you following that clown car pile of dog shit that it's called this administration. If it wasn't for her doing some back end deals, and we're talking deals, to be able to get yourself into that position. You were standing right next to, you were the closest reporter, for anybody that isn't aware of it, to J.D. Vance and President Trump. You haven't been a reporter with any level of credibility or non-bias ever. And they put you right there because you were part of the hatchet job that conversation was about. You have no credibility. You have no ethics. You make real reporters who actually do real reporting sad. You make people who understand how news is supposed to be delivered sad. The fact that you're hooked your line to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh, not Strax with a blonde wig.
Dead! About that bad butch body. And she probably could take your ass in a fight, Mr. I'm a big, strong MAGA man. Because the amount of just pathetic that exists in your system is unbelievable. So please, take your ass back to your literal right-wing news network, and I might actually be quoting the name of whatever the fuck you report on of, or you report in, and just sit in the shadows where you belong. Stop trying to come out into the sunlight. We know it burns your skin, you vampire piece of shit. Thank you. You can go.
Oh, and since we're on that, I have one more. I have two more. Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham, bring your asses over here. Let me tell you, homosexual, something. The way y'all reacted, both Marco Rubio and Lindsey Graham were Putin is the biggest threat to America. You know, all of this stuff, all these things, and you have fallen in line and slobbing up Putin's nuts. What are we doing here? What is happening here? And the way the two of you flip-flopped on Zelensky within 2 hours, if you see, especially you, Lady Graham, what was it? I don't remember. Lady something. I forget what your hustler alias was, but it's fine. I'm calling you Lady Graham today. Especially you. The very morning, the morning of that event, of that meeting, you were shaking hands with Zelensky and talking about we're going to do the things we need to do and we've got your back all the way and all of that stuff. And then Trump pulled his bullshit. And now you're like, Zelensky needs to apologize and he needs to come to the table. Sir.
Apologize for fucking what? Sorry, need to throw that in there.
I don't know what dirt Trump has on you, but I know this ain't worth it.
Real Epstein files.
This ain't worth it. And you, Marco Rubio, I am especially ashamed of because yup. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Thank you for that. But you, Marco Rubio, you were the biggest one who was talking about we need to do more to stop Putin and all of this stuff. And now you're over there having a full cut. Like what? No dicks for you for the next 6 weeks.
At least.
Not even if you pay for it. No dick for you. And I know y'all paying for it. I know y'all paying for it.
And Mason, thank you for pointing that out for people that don't read our chat. The reason why support for Ukraine went back into play was because the Supreme Court said Doge and Trump cannot freeze the spending. It's already been approved. It's already been allocated. It's technically Congress's job. That's a different thing.
And how are you going to negotiate a ceasefire between two countries and one of the countries ain't even there? You're a liar, sir. You're a liar and the truth is not in you. Bitch ass bitch. And on that note, guys, this was another episode of Queer Present Danger.
Mm-hmm.
We do this show every other week unless, shit happens. And on the weeks we're not doing this, we are over on Twitch playing Cyberqueer 3120, my D&D game with some other queer friends of mine. It's always a good time. I don't have anything to plug. Oh, yes, I do. I do have a thing to plug. If you're in the St. Louis area on March 29th, come to Bar PM for JB's Spring Fling. It's going to be a great time. We're going to be raising money for my travel fund and Missouri Trans Umbrella Group because I put my money where my mouth is. I do the things I say I'm going to do. And it's going to be a great time. There's going to be some fun scenes and things that are happening that are going to be cute and fun. Well, they're going to be fun for all of those. There's going to be a prom king and queen contest happening. It's going to be amazing and fun and wonderful. So let's all go back to high school because that was fun. Yay. Carson, I want to say to you, thank you so much for being on. And I would love to have you back sometime and we can continue this conversation. Why don't you tell people where they can find you unless you're like, don't find me, I'm fine.
Listen, I'm just not on the internet like that. If you want to find me, find JB and you can send me a text message. That's probably about it. The only thing that I would maybe plug is Central Plains Community Awards happening April 5th here in Kansas City. Come on out, see everybody, dress in your leather, have a good time. We'll be giving some awards. Yay! We'll give some good awards to people who've been doing some good stuff. And like we talked about at the top of this, it's a good time to be around good people and around the people that share the same experiences that we're all going through.
Share your experiences, your values,
have a good time.
And all of that. And I will be there for that as well.
Yes.
So you'll be able to see all three of us.
Hey.
What about you, Tag? You already plugged your blog, but do it again.
Yeah. Everybody, reminder, I'm Tighearn Duriok. I am at Tighearn1, that's TIGHEARN, the number 1, on almost all my socials now. And I have a blog. It's called Shadows to Light. It is my journey of acceptance and into the kink and leather and LGBT community and recognizing my true self. And the mental struggles that went through all of that, trying to really come into who I am, as well as my current issues with imposter syndrome, because that's a fucking thing.
Ooh, girl, don't even get me started.
So be sure to read up on it. I am trying to get a little more active on there. I know I had a lot of time in between some of my posts, but I am trying to build up a whole list of that. I'm even thinking about starting a fun thing where I discuss the struggles of living in our current age and all of the things that it involves. being part of the communities that I'm a part of, and the mental health gymnastics that it takes to survive right now. But yeah, that's me. I will be in Kansas City for the Central Plains, and I will be here in St. Louis for JV Spring Fling. So come out and see us. If you have any kind words, feel free to share them. If you don't have kind words, keep them to your motherfucking self.
Or come talk to me, because if you want some, I got some.
But that's me.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We love you. We'll see you guys week after next. Tyler will be back for that one. And that's all we have to say to that. Bye-bye.